Welcome back to the show as we continue our discussion on the terror attacks in Paris. Thanks, everyone, for joining us back off the break. Arsalan Iftikhar, I want to come to you about something that Frank Romano said before the break. We have a strong right wing in France. Are they likely, do you think, to gain credibility going forward? What about the Muslim population? How are they feeling right now? And what about the future of this European project, considering there's been so much criticism of refugees coming in from war-torn Syria? Fears, rightly or wrongly, that one of the terrorists may have been one of those?
Well, you know, Nathan, you know, what's important to keep in mind for your viewers is, first of all, that, you know, 10% of France's population is of Muslim background. And so with such a high concentration of the population, you know, many politicians like Marine Le Pen, the Front National, have essentially used, you know, the anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim platform to further their agendas. I mean, starting from 2004.
Do you think they're going to do better in the local elections that are coming out?
I think so. I think so. And again, let's keep in mind that this is not in a vacuum. You know, in 2004, you had the headscarf ban by President Jacques Chirac. You know, you have you know, the legacy of Jean-Marie Le Pen, and you have other...
You've been to the banlieues in Paris. You've seen a lot of the Muslim citizens of France who feel disaffected. What are they telling you?
Well, you know, I did work with the French Foreign Ministry after the social unrest in 2005, and they brought me to the banlieue, and I spoke with the Muslim communities there. And essentially, a lot of these kids just want opportunities. They want jobs. They want to be, you know, not discriminated against in the workplace. They want the same opportunities that all French people have. And of course, you know, this is not justifying, you know, these horrific attacks that occurred. But again, there are systemic problems that, you know, that the French society has to undertake, and marginalizing the Muslim community over the last 10 years, you know, obviously has not helped things to this point.
Lauren Anderson, no stranger to the Patriot Act in this country. Is France going to do something similar? We had former President Nicolas Sarkozy talking about tagging people who are radicalized, 11,000 people thought to be radicalized in France, monitoring by hundreds of extra law enforcement. Is this going to be the future of France?
Personally, I hope not. It's clear that they have to undertake a review of their procedures, which is exactly what we did in the United States after 9/11. One of the things they are talking about is anyone who comes back from Syria, travel in that area, is to put them under house arrest for some period of time. In the experience that I had in the 4+ years that I worked in France with the French, they have very effective laws on the books in many regards. And so that's very helpful. I do see that there's a great possibility, driven by some of the fear, depending on the impact of certain components of the political structure, to try and tighten things up. But I hope they don't go too far. Certainly, if there is a way, given the volume, to have a better idea of who's traveling to Syria, and perhaps, if not house arrest, at least initiate a program that would allow automatic interviews of people coming back from there. That would certainly be a step that is less intrusive, but that would allow French authorities to have a conversation for some limited period of time with these individuals. And I think that there's enough intelligence out there available both within France and among all of the countries that work together, that there would be certain key indicators that they might be able to extract during an interview like that without taking more draconian steps. So it may happen. Personally, I hope it doesn't happen, because at the end of the day, while you could give a little bit more authority perhaps for electronic surveillance or other things, what sets us apart from many countries, those of us that operate in democracies, is that we do try very hard to balance the rights of people along with the security, and I hope that France follows that same path.
Frank Romano, obviously liberté, égalité, fraternité, but also France has a history of terrorism which unfortunately doesn't start with Charlie Hebdo. I mean, you can go back to the 1950s, obviously, with Algeria and everything. How does this fit in to France's history and psyche? And how do you think it's going to affect France's, not just internal politics, but let's say position vis-a-vis other countries when it comes to terrorism in the world?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I've been here recently since '93, and there were also attacks because of the alleged involvement of the French government in Algerian elections in the metro that I almost got caught in. So it's even been this close even before Charlie Hebdo. What impact? I think the French, there is informed people out there in France that are saying we need to educate ourselves. And going back to what Arsalan said about going to the suburbs and talking with the youth, we need to work on the communities, something that the United States should do as well. And we see what's happening in the United States. Working with the
sorry to
communities,
interrupt.
working with youth. Because,
did that happen after Charlie Hebdo?
Just add one thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and well, just to give you an idea, also that ISIS, and just not ISIS has a real strategy here that we're aware of, and we must be aware of. As an example, just going back to beheadings in Libya of the Coptic Christians, ISIS would love to get the United States and France much more involved, and even the Muslim communities much more anti-Western countries, because they are offering food, money, and resources, especially in Syria and Iraq, but they're trying to turn around also and entice our youth. And if our youth feels marginalized, as had been addressed, then they're going to be more enticed to join up ISIS, even if they don't believe in the fanaticism, some type of financial resource, some type of security, and then the ideology in back of it. This is what I'm saying. We've got to refrain from getting sucked into this.
What do you think? Do you think these attacks will actually increase recruitment in France?
I think it depends on our society's responses, and that's why I get back to the gray zone, right? If we start to see draconian measures where, you know, the Muslim communities are being disparately targeted simply because we happen to be Muslims, then I think that it could increase the marginalization, which could potentially increase the recruitment pool. However, if our societies embrace the Muslims, you know, we're starting to see hate crimes in mosques around the West now in the last 48 hours since the attacks, you know, addressing these issues, making sure that the rhetoric, you know, we're starting to see Republican presidential candidates here in the United States, Donald Trump saying that, you know, these Syrian refugees could be Trojan horses. Like, this sort of rhetoric is not going to be helpful at all in terms of strengthening this gray zone that we need to strengthen.
But France is a secular society.
Yes.
There has been some pushback, for example, about banning the hijab in public, that people can't wear headscarves at school. Where is the community right now in terms of its relationship with the French state? Obviously, there's been an overwhelming rejection of the type of violence, and Muslim groups are very strong and very quick to do that. But there is this disconnect.
Yeah, and you know, as an international human rights lawyer, you know, I've always spoken out against the hijab ban because it not only violates the French Constitution, but the European Declaration on Human Rights. And you know, France's notion of laïcité or secularism is not a separation of church and state; it's a separation of church from state. They're almost hyper-secular, and they're very hyper-secular and knee-jerk, especially against Muslims. And we start to see this all over Europe. We saw the banning of minarets in Switzerland, even though there are only 4 mosques that have a minaret on them. You know, so this is not just an issue that France has to deal with, but we're starting to see this in other EU nations as well.
Lauren Anderson, last word to you. You know, as this investigation spans out all over Europe, you must have seen this before, similar investigations. What are we meant to look for in the next few days and the next few weeks? And maybe this is a little too early to ask it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What lessons can we learn?
What we're going to continue to see in the next few days, some of it visible to us, some of it not, is a tremendous amount of effort on the part of all of the law enforcement intelligence services around the world to share information, provide whatever assistance we can to support the French. As the FBI, they accepted help from the FBI. That's critical. And the kinds of things that are going to be going on behind the scenes is interviewing all kinds of people, reviewing every file. I can tell you that the FBI is doing that now. They will go back and look at every single file that there is that might shed some light or might provide some bit of intelligence. The same thing will be going on in every country in Western Europe, and those requests will be made of other countries in the Middle East, North Africa, and the region, and that's absolutely critical. They are also going to get whatever resources they can and legal backing that they can to continue and start investigations on individuals that now may have come to their attention. In terms of lessons learned here, I go back to what both Frank and Arsalan have said, and that I believe strongly in, and we cannot allow this to continue to divide people. The only way we're going to battle ISIS is to counter their message by embracing the Muslim community. And frankly, I'm in favor, if teens are identified, of an intervention sort of program and talking with them. And I hope that that is a lesson learned, that we don't further alienate any component of any population, but that we seek their help in moving forward.
Lauren, thanks. Last word has to go to Frank Romano in Paris. We've seen so many images of solidarity What can we do to help the French? Is it buy a good bottle of wine? Is it book a holiday to Paris? What do you think would make the most difference here, the solidarity with France going forward over the next few days?
You know, I see this interview itself is showing, coming out of Washington, D.C., and many of messages that people have come, they've sent solidarity videos and YouTube saying, we're with you. Hang in there. Let's not turn this around and start targeting people because of it. Let's not revenge against Muslims. Let's come together as a country, not just the solidarity with France, but of the world for freedom and loving our neighbors, as it says in the Bible and the Torah and so forth. I believe this is happening now, and just keep flowing those messages. The French are listening, French are watching, and I really thank you for your solidarity.
Frank Romano in Paris.
For the solidarity in the world.